Okay, well, I'm the interviewer, Antonio T. Smith Jr., and this is Dr. Ferris, and this is an interview for his audience and my audience, I suppose. So I hope to be such a good interviewer to where I ask great questions from the book that you have coming out, which you're about to give an introduction to. And I hope I'm even more of a good interviewer by having you talk 85 to 90% of the time, because that's a good interview when the author does all the talking. So we get behind the scenes. First and foremost, Dr. Ferris, tell us who you are and the name of the book and the nature of the book. And I've got about 80 questions we probably won't get to, but I got about 80 book related questions for you.
80. Wow. That's a lot.
It
Okay.
is. It is.
um, yeah, we might need 10 interviews.
Just might.
Just like, yeah. I'm Joshua Ferris, and right now uh, I'm the on research faculty at Ruhr University Bochum, and I am uh, uh, currently working with on some projects with you, right,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Smith?
Some changing the
And
world projects.
that's right. And one of those projects is spiritually driven leadership. So just to let the audience who's listening know, check that out, spirituallydrivenleadership.com. Spirituallydrivenleadership.com. You're supposed to say it 3 times, right?
So
So
people
they
can
don't
get it.
forget.
Right.
Yes,
Like we used to leave the voicemails back in the day. You
that's
call
right.
me back at my number. You say it 3 times.
Yes. Yes. So we got a lot rolling out there, some courses, some subscriptions, and in particular, subscription for a weekly meeting, which I hope you'll be a part of. Um,
Oh yeah.
you and the audience, everybody.
Mhm.
Everybody. So that's something that's a little bit about me. Over the years, I've spent, I guess, a little over 10 years really honing in on a series of questions related to consciousness, the soul, anthropology, religious anthropology. And so these are some areas of my interest, my research interest and expertise. And uh, so that leads me to the book. You ask about this book, The Banquet of Souls, uh, A Mirror to the Universe. Um, that's the title. And maybe I'll
It's
modify it some.
the book is dense in a good
Yeah.
way. It
Yeah.
is it's a lot happening. This book can have, in fact, I've got it written. My notes are in one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I had to categorize my notes into eight different groups. So this book can spin off eight other books, if you ask me. That's how great this book is and how dense it is and such valuable information. But keep going because I have a Paul
Yeah.
comparison for you with this book. I want to come up bring up in a little bit.
Oh, yeah. That'd
Apostle
be
Paul
great.
comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I think it's yeah, it is concentrated. I'm trying to cover a lot of ground in short space and also do so well as best as possible in a very accessible and more popularly written way. I don't know how popular it is, but it's about as popular as I've seen in a book on the soul that still points to the literature that's out there that also gives some substantive arguments for from the wider discussions that are taking place in a sort of short way, a concentrated way, a summative way. And so that was the attempt of the book. I wanted to write a book that was for hopefully, ideally, uh, a very broad audience, a mainstream audience, one that was not only philosophically sophisticated um, and substantive, um, systematic in a way in dealing with the topics as they relate to one another, but also one that was energizing and even hopefully a bit fun. And so that was generally the sort of the goal of this book. I've written other books before. Most of the books I've written have been academic texts, academic books for scholars and beyond, sort of scholars who are interested in this sort of particular topic. Probably not many people would pick up those books. Um, my most recent book that has been published, The Creation of Self, is an attempt to make an academic contribution, to make an argument that we are souls, and that as souls, that points to the fact that there is some kind of divine being. And so it's a unique argument, but it's also moving in the direction of, this is written for the mainstream audience, not just for my academic audience. And so this book is even a further attempt to make it even, hopefully, more accessible, more readable, although it probably still requires some work, especially as you work through some of the arguments. There are places where the reader could um, skip over some of the more dense argumentative points, but they're there if they want to think about it in a bit more depth and detail. This book
I'm
kind
that
of,
kind of reader. I like
yeah.
the dense. Yeah, I love the intellectual conversations and points that you have in here. I love them.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's hopefully to tease you, to draw you into some of those denser parts. So there is a bit of a tease to help ease you into some of these things that maybe the mainstream, maybe the popular reader wouldn't be so inclined at first, at least, to read or to think
Mhm.
about. And so hopefully that's the sort of ethos of the book. The the main and here's the kind of the big metaphor that is kind of driving the lens of the book. The metaphor is, well, as suggested by the title, "The Banquet of Souls." It's around a dinner table conversation. And so when I think about um, times that I've had the most fun, I've experienced the most energy, maybe I've even come up with probably the best ideas I've had. Um, Almost moments where I've experienced maybe um, glimmers of transcendence and divinity and decadence, all wrapped into one. It always seems to center around dinner table conversations where the discussion is flowing, it's free, it's open. There's a tendency toward more transparency. You, I mean, I think we've all experienced this at some point in our lives. We have a good dinner, good drinks, good spirits. Maybe I'm using that in two senses, maybe more than one kind of spirit. And those are the moments that we relate to others, we experience others maybe in a deeper way, in a more open way than we had before. And when you experience those moments or those encounters, there's always there's always this sort of um, this borderline. There's this line where you're experiencing something great, but as is the tendency for humanity, there's always the apple in the room. You know, the metaphorical apple, right? In the Garden of Eden. There's always the chance or the temptation to something. It's like you're experiencing transcendence, but it almost could be corrupted, right?
That's fair.
So so it's around a dinner table. And I love that metaphor
Yeah,
for a lot of different reasons, because the dinner table also, in more mundane ways, it serves as a metaphor for the familial place where discussions occur, um, where projects are made, where plans are made and executed and created. So anyway, yeah, that's the metaphor. I just wanted to give a sense of that.
Many of empires have happened across the dinner table.
That's
So
right.
we
Yeah,
created right there in that conversation. Many of marriages happen right at a dinner table, first date, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
yeah, and many of disgusting political conversations have happened right at a dinner
Yeah.
table. So
All
for
the
sure,
good and the bad, right?
all the good and the bad, for sure, for
Yes.
sure. Well, yeah. So this is The Banquet of Souls. It's a fantastic book. And I have so many questions, but since you brought up what you just brought up, and you skipped me down to a section of You Are Not Your Body. So I think that's what I'm going to do. As you talk, I'm going to flow into whatever I think you're in the conversation in my questions. And there's a section in here where You're Not Your Body. I have no idea where it's at in the actual book, but I can give you the great context of it because I wrote it down. This was your empirical and philosophical evidence section of the out of body and near death experiences. And here you indicated that essence extends beyond the physical body. And then you brought up Rene Descartes, which I'm a fan,
Excellent.
suggesting that there's a possibility of existing independently of a physical body. The reason I
Yeah.
bring it up because we're sitting at the dinner table, and this banquet of souls seems to suggest there's a uh, flesh us sitting there, and then there's a soul us sitting there. Maybe there's this duality. So, what would you? How does your book cover these things? Tell us about the out of body experience, the Rene Descartes argument you have, all in there. Just go on a long little tangent about all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, so this gets into the sort of the meat or the heart of the book. The book is as you said, a defense of the idea that we as persons are souls, and that that's kind of the old Platonic thesis
Oh, sure,
that
sure,
someone
definitely.
like Aristotle denied, as well as Thomas, which I'll be speaking on this coming week. Thomas makes an explicit statement. I'm trying to remember the Latin, how he says it. Anyway, he says basically he's basically denying the Platonic thesis that I am my soul. And so the book is really written for those academic types who care about this. It's really written in the more Platonic tradition than the Aristotelian tradition, probably. Although there are some Thomists who would move in this direction, but it's really written more in the Platonic, the Augustinian, and the Cartesian tradition. So following the fathers of Plato, Augustine, and Descartes, and that's where my kind of um, allegiances and inclinations have been for several years now. Um,
That's very interesting. I have so many questions based off what you just said the last 5 seconds.
yeah,
So many questions. That's very interesting. Let me pause you right there and then repeat what you just said, but
yeah,
this time repeat it to someone who doesn't be in school as much as me and you. So,
yeah,
so you went to
yeah,
different schools of thoughts, Aquinas, Plato, Descartes. You group them into a rational thought, which not well actually Aquinas should not be grouped there. You didn't group him there, but you grouped the rest right there, and then you set before us two different sides of this argument: one that rejects, one that does not reject, and Plato started it, and then etc. So break that
yeah,
back down to your average person, and then we'll pick it back up. And I'm absolutely going to have you pick it back up because I love what you just said. I absolutely do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there's two ideas basically. One idea, um, we're going back to the kind of the more ancient world, and of course, in modernity, this gets kind of more complicated. But
in hyper modernity now, so it's even more
yeah,
complicated.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two basic ideas you might say crudely in the ancient world. There's the idea that I am something like my soul, like that angelic part of being that makes me me, that a part of me that gets me closer to God, right? And just putting it kind of in those terms, um, that's
That's fair.
basically the gist or the spirit of what somebody like Plato would say, or those following Plato.
Right.
Aristotle's tradition often is conceived of as, I mean, Aristotle was a student
That
of
rejected all of Plato's
Socrates,
teachings.
right? And he turned around. And, yeah, he did. That's right. That's right. And he did in large measure. He flipped things on its head in many ways. He inverted things, and um, I mean, so you might say some philosophers, of course, like Heidegger and others, will say that all of philosophy is a footnote to Plato. Others will say something similar, that all of philosophy is a footnote to Plato and Aristotle. And
Fair
so,
enough. That's fair.
so
Both the second one is even more fair than the first.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah, you can bring it back to both.
And yeah, I mean, they're just vital figures. I mean, if we want to
Yeah,
understand our world, we want to
yeah,
understand the Western world, especially, we want to understand that Plato and Aristotle, I mean, they're like the two fountainheads of knowledge.
absolutely.
I mean,
And
everything seems to come follow from them.
I think most of people's Christianity is filtered through Plato, whether they recognize it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whether they recognize it or not. I think
Yeah.
most of Western civilization, because Augustine of Hippo did it. He platonized Christianity, and then a lot of the ideas that we have in Christianity are quite Platonic, whether we understand them or not.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you have this whole trend within, I guess it depends where we're talking, but you have this whole trend within evangelical Christianity that is tending to the uh yeah, I mean, certainly on corruption and other things, they follow Augustine. When it comes to the afterlife, there's this whole strong impulse away from Augustine and Plato to say,
Mhm.
like it following N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright,
Okay,
for
yeah, break it
example,
down. What a great okay.
falls he falls he moves in the other direction away from Augustine on these things. Yeah, he actually follows more Saint Irenaeus, which is often perceived as being sort of contrasted with Augustine. But I mean, so the emphasis there is much more on the body, and
Right.
I am my body, and I'm going to be in my new body someday, and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. But then, of course, Plato seems to always be kind of behind the scenes.
Mhm.
I think is what you're pointing to as well. Certainly, Augustine is behind the scenes, especially as it comes to the West view of sin and potentially the denigration of the body in various ways, or this sort of misperception of the body. And then, but Plato seems to be in the background as well. I mean, Plato
Mhm.
seems to always pop his head back up
Mhm.
in the discussions in subtle ways. And
So let
maybe
me
that,
bring up a subtle way because it's right here. So you're gonna have to separate what is the spirit from the soul, and I'm about to bring in the Holy Spirit and make it even more difficult for you. So I do apologize in advance. This very difficult question, but since we're here, Plato would say this is what we got a platonic relationship that my soul should talk to your soul. I'm being crude and very archaic here, but and so let's push that now to the figure of Jesus. He's in the body, yet there is a spirit in him connected to the kingdom of heaven.
yeah.
How does your research of soul, how does this Platonic thing that we're talking about, how would you explain that I am almost like if we put this in a technological sense, I'm on Earth, heaven's up there, whatever heaven is, and for this discussion,
Yeah.
it's irrelevant for this discussion. But the Holy Spirit is like a Bluetooth. It connects me on the ground to whatever is up there. Right? It's like the Bluetooth connection, and it's
Yeah.
encrypted that only those with the right encryption, right? Okay,
Uh,
can get that. It's totally loaded, but what would you, how would you have fun with this conversation right here? Because we're there, so we might as well just go ahead and muddy the water a little bit more.
yeah. 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 That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, gosh, where do I begin? So there's
Yeah.
this whole hierarchy, right? And so this is certainly represented in the ancient world. There's this embedded hierarchy in everything that's done. I mean, and it explodes in the medieval period. Of where, I mean, Christian thought, I mean, really developed to a large extent. It's fascinating. The soul is related as well in that the soul is perceived by the ancients as being something of a microcosm of the
Hmm.
world that itself is a hierarchy. So is the soul, or whatever you want to call it, the soul or the spirit. I mean, if we're not using the very technical terms that they used back then, but the hierarchy within the soul is understands that there are different parts of the soul that are related, but that when activated rightly, there's the higher parts of the soul. So there's one way to think about this is uh, uh, there's the kind of lower sort of vegetative soul,
Okay.
and
That's interesting.
that according to the Aristotelian world. Everything has a soul. All of the vegetation, the plants, even themselves, have a soul. And so, at one level, some would say that humans have vegetative souls, but they also have other higher souls. Others would say that, well, we have vegetative capacities, but they're part of our higher soul. And that higher soul is there's this sort of animalistic brute soul, and then there's the highest soul, the intellectual soul. But then you get that kind of transformative sort of process in Christianity where um, there's especially if you're sort of more of a this is getting us into some deeper waters, sometimes
You
muddy
are
waters,
Mr.
but
Deep Water.
uh,
That's where you
so
hang out at.
yeah, so some would say that this takes us to the spirit, which is even that higher sort of part of the soul, even mystical part of the soul. And so that, depending on what traditions within Christianity, there are different practices that help you arrive at that sort of higher part of the soul. You might also think of this like Professor Michael Foley, in his famous article in 1997, "Tobacco in the Soul," where he says the lowest part of the soul is correlated to or the other way around. The cigarette smoking is correlates to the lowest part of the soul. Cigars correlate to the brute part of the soul, that animal, the power of man.
And I do love
And
me a cigar.
yeah, and the pipe is for the highest, the rational
Oh.
man. It's the highest. Actually, but I mean, there's a yeah, that's an interesting
That
discussion.
is
That's a fun
interesting.
discussion. That takes us down a whole
I
other
like
way.
it though. I like
Yeah,
it. I think
yeah.
yeah, I like it though.
Francis Lee challenges that, which I think somebody needed to. I didn't know about this article recently. Lee says no, cigars are at the highest because cigars are like our sacred companion that we
Ah,
carry with us.
ah.
And it's like if you're an esotericist, it's like that demon that you have on your shoulder that you take
Hmm.
with you everywhere, that you carry. It's your companion that helps you, that inspires you and enlightens you. But anyway, um,
I like that. I never heard that before. I like that. I like the argument too, the anti-argument. That was fun. No, keep going. And then I'm going to ask you. I want to bring it back to Aristotle in a fun way too, and I'm gonna bring it back to Aristotle in a fun way. But keep going. This is.
yeah,
We
yeah.
definitely
So
have to do 10 episodes because I've really only asked you one question from my notes. The other question is coming from your conversations.
that's good. That's good. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Aristotle and Plato, they
Oh,
kind
okay, okay. Hold on, don't go. So if you go back to Aristotle, let me ask you this question: what would
yeah.
Aristotle say about your book, Banquet of the Souls? That's what I wanted to ask, and then we could talk about Aristotle and Plato. What would he say about your book?
He would probably say something like this in his ancient way. You live in the clouds too much.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Now,
Um,
Plato would say the opposite.
yeah, he would say, yeah, you're right there. You're in the dialectic. You
Yeah,
maybe you haven't
exactly.
arrived, but you're there. I'll get in there with you.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Augustine would agree. I mean, there are there are hints of Augustine in the book as well. I mean,
Hmm.
it's more subtle. It's not explicit. I'm not doing any real history here. I'm not doing any
No, you're having a
I don't do
banquet
any
at a dinner
biblical work.
table. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that's right.
just yeah, yeah. This is not that book. You're not trying to do that in this book.
That's right. That's
Right.
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 Yeah, it's not biblical. It's um
It's a dinner
Augustine's
table
there
conversation.
though. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Augustine is there though in this way. Um Augustine and his Confessions, if we're all familiar with Confessions, it's a famous book. Whether you like theology or philosophy or not,
It's a great
that
book.
book is important to the history
Absolutely.
of Western literature.
Absolutely is.
It's a vital to our the canon of education that we have as Westerners, because I mean I think arguably it was Augustine in the Confessions where he really helps us to um, uh, uh, see more clearly the window into our own soul.
Right.
So he's picking up on the old tradition from Socrates, right? Which all of philosophy is about this, for Socrates, know thyself.
Right.
And Augustine is picking up on that, but he's doing it in a different way. But he takes us on this whole basically Platonic journey
He does.
as he's exploring Christianity and as he's trying to get back to the God of creation
Which is
that
why I
he
say
sees in
most of
Christian
Christianity
kingdom.
today, Western Christianity, is filtered through Augustine and Plato because he absolutely, and he does a brilliant job at it too. He doesn't just do it, he does a brilliant job doing it. Now, whether
Hmm.
you agree with it or not is different, but he does a
Yeah,
brilliant thinking
yeah,
job of doing that for sure.
that's
Keep
right.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. It's brilliant. I mean, the
Yeah.
Confessions are brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one book to return to many times in your life.
Yeah.
It's but he takes us on this internal journey, right? This internal journey, this exploration. And so certainly that's in the background of this book. I mean,
Sure.
I'm helping in the conversation. I'm trying to help us see that not only do we have a soul, but take a journey into the soul to see
Right.
what's there and
You,
to see
you're
that.
even playing with the nature of God and humanity. You don't say that, but I can
Yeah,
see it,
yeah,
because Augustine does that in Confessions. I can see you have this, I want to say duality, but I think that's too simplistic for what I'm trying to say about what you're doing. But you're doing something that I can't put my finger on, but that's why we're talking to the author.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's an interesting way to put. Yeah,
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 yeah, you're doing something. So,
yeah.
okay, so here's a question in the same area. Here's a question: soul and memory. I'm gonna ask you
Yeah,
this. Okay. All right. Well, I
yeah,
don't even have to ask the question. You go
yeah.
ahead. Tell us.
Soul and memory.
All
Gosh,
right.
we should have a podcast just on that. Soul and
Just
memory.
on that. Yeah,
We
this
could
is
talk about that for hours.
I
Soul
told you,
and
man,
memory.
I read your book intimately. I have
Yes.
yeah, you're bringing up stuff
Yeah.
everywhere you talk. Oh, I remember he said this. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about that soul and memory.
Whew. Yeah, soul and memory. That's huge. I mean, certainly this is Descartes is doing this as he's recalling his memory in his famous uh, maybe possibly most important book, The Meditations, that everybody knows about.
Yeah,
If you have to read the classics, then um, that's going to be one of the books that
it's
you
no
read.
brainer.
The Meditations. But in the Meditations, Descartes is a very controversial figure in the history of thought. He's really
I love
controversial
every
today.
bit of it. I love every bit of
Yeah, he's
it.
awesome. I mean, I love Descartes. I mean, um, but he's really controversial. He's really
Mhm.
controversial today. I mean, if you read psychologists and sociologists, they don't like Descartes too much. They're pretty down on him. So, but anyway, I mean, in the meditations, what he's doing is actually at one level, and this is where it gets picked up on as being destructive. At one level, he's novel, right? Because
Mhm.
and he's kind of he's on the edge, right? This is where this
Right.
whole notion of the dinner table. The dinner table is it's so beautiful, but the dinner table also has the possibility to cross that line. Right. And Descartes is often perceived as the one who's crossed the line. And he opened up a whole new world. I mean, when he opened that up, he exploded. I mean, and then you have, oh, they're balloons. Did you see that? The balloons?
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
fingers.
yeah.
Is that
When you
AI?
do yes, that's Apple. When you do the two, I think balloons pop you up. There you go. When you do the two, that's the update.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's new. That's cool. That's neat. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, they're probably recording us now.
Using your camera to see other places behind in the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish we got paid for all this
I know,
information we're
right?
giving them. They
I
should
know.
pay us, right?
Now that's a podcast in itself.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exploring that. Yeah, for
Yeah, they
sure.
should be. Uh, well, anyway, so we're just scratching the surface on this memory that we haven't even touched on it. So memory and the soul is massive. Yeah, Descartes in the Meditations is recalling. So what he's doing is in a way, he begins in this meditation, and so meditations, uh, he's doing something both old and new at the same time, and this is why he gets into hot waters, right? But he because he does this in more than one way. He meditations is not an uncommon thing in the ancient world. He's doing a meditation, and this is what we have. I mean, look, think back to Marcus Aurelius's
Oh yeah.
meditations and the Stoics, what they were doing, the meditations,
Yep.
and then of course going back to Augustine's Confessions, that's a meditation.
Yep.
And all of Augustine, when he's going on this internal journey, he's doing so by way of this recollection method, this memorializing of what his past is that is a window into eternity for him, right? And so Descartes is picking up on that in the meditations. Um, it, for those who dismiss Descartes and what he's doing, they dismiss him because he does some really provocative things. I mean, he's memorializing, but he's saying, I want to remember in order to forget, so, so that I might arrive at truth that is
Right.
sure and sturdy and the most certain of knowledge that not even, I mean, maybe doesn't even depend upon. Um, my memory, which because my memory maybe could be flawed, it could be corrupted,
That's his
right?
whole basis. Yeah.
And so, And so what he's doing there is quite provocative because everybody relied on memory. I mean, but also it's provocative because what Descartes' doing is in the meditations is he's saying, look, I'm giving up the whole Western canon.
Yep.
Says that, like, I can't remember the line exactly, but early on he's saying, look, I'm putting aside all the books,
Hmm.
right? As if, and this characterizes the whole modern discussion, right? Because everybody says, well, the moderns, beginning with Descartes, they're trying to do something completely new. And so they're trying to give up everything else that they've learned, which which you might say is really folly. It's just foolishness, right? And so you when you read Descartes, you wonder if he's a fool or if he's really a wise man.
I've got so much to say, but I want you to talk. It's like it's,
And so he reminds you of that Spanish that Spaniard, the Spanish classical text, La Mort de Arthur. Yeah, La Mort de Arthur, where you have that, that man who goes and he wants to fight, and he has this make-believe world, and he goes and he has all these these tin, I guess they're like tin cans, and he thinks they're really people, and he leads a whole people to fight them. And so it raises this whole discussion about, is he wise or is he a fool? Is he courageous or is he something else? And so Descartes is kind of a later sort of incarnation of that in some ways. I mean, is he really, what is he doing there? Is it really foolish or is it wise? Is he destroying all of the history of philosophy preceding him, or and creating something really new, or is he just a destructive figure? So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it
the
absolutely
point.
it answers the question and takes us deeper in itself. And I got plenty to say, but you keep going. I'm loving it.
So,
I'm absolutely loving
so the memory thing, that's the way, the vehicle by which he's trying to begin his meditation to arrive at this sort of um, pure concept that is at the foundation of knowledge. So he's trying to, uh, through memory, ironically, he's trying to arrive at a certain kind of knowledge, a science of knowledge. He wants to provide us with a science. And you know, as much as he gets dismissed today, I mean, actually, he was quite brilliant. He knew the sciences, and so Cartesian science was actually of that time
sure.
was actually quite brilliant. And now we look at him, we're like, yeah, he was stupid. Well, I think that's unfortunate and unfair. But Cartesian, there are some who are trying to resurrect Cartesian science, um, but anyway, they're probably perceived by many as being kind of esoteric, kind
I'm
of
sure.
uh, uh, ludicrous figures. But anyway, actually, he's quite brilliant. But anyway, he's working with a whole geometry, right? And he's
Mhm.
trying to, but in the meditations, he's trying to arrive at that. Interestingly, he's trying to provide a science of knowledge in the meditations, but he is also trying to secure the foundations in order to demonstrate the truthfulness of the Catholic Church, which he sees the soul as at the center in some way, as the kind of the embodiment in a microcosm of the Church, or as a type of the Church itself. He's trying to demonstrate that. That is true, and that the Catholic teaching is right, based upon sure and certain scientific knowledge, or what we would call today philosophical knowledge. And he's doing so through memory. And memory is the way in which we take or begin this internal journey into the soul. And so yeah, so he's trying to demonstrate the truthfulness that there is a soul, the immortality of the soul, and that there will be an afterlife.
Yeah.
If he can demonstrate that, then these are kind of the essentials of the Catholic Church that hold the coherence of it all together. Um, and so he doesn't do so in a sort of Thomas way. He's actually very explicit in many ways. He's rejecting Thomas and the Aristotelian tradition. So he's taking up the Platonic tradition
Mhm.
and trying to do the Platonic thing in demonstrating Christian truths on certainty. And he's doing so by way of this memorial tradition of this internal journey into the soul. And he's doing so by to show that I, as a person, am somehow connected to my soul, or the core of me is my soul, in contrast to the Aristotelian tradition that I am my body. Even a very sophisticated body, a highly sophisticated body that has a rational soul, but it's perceived as being one thing with the body. So the body itself, in some ways, I am my body. I am an animal, but I'm a human animal, which for Aristotle is different, right? It's for Thomas. Thomas picks up on this. I am a rational animal,
Mhm.
and so that whole tradition um, becomes instructive to the Western reflections or uh, um, uh, recollections of what uh, uh, Christianity is doing. And then you have this other tradition that, in some ways, at least on the surface, you might say has a lot of similarities and overlap, but in a deeper way, they're doing something quite different, and that's the Platonic tradition that says, "No, I'm not my animal. I am my soul, and my soul is that part of me that um, that helps us get back to intuition. We know by way of intuition rather than knowing by way of sensory perception, which is what Thomas is doing.
Mhm.
So the whole way in which we begin or come to know God himself is different. It's different altogether. And so both would have some place for the soul. The soul is radically different in quite radically different in the way that they're both perceiving the way they pick up on it. Um, Aristotle is often taken to be a what you would call a monist, and then um, Plato is often what you would call a dualist, um, and uh, and so this whole dialectic becomes pretty important to the development of Western Christian thought, this whole dialectic, and then you see it in Descartes, but then you also see the reaction to Descartes from the Thomists who say, no, Descartes got it all wrong. He's actually taking us down the sort of Platonic path that is actually taking us away from the certainty of Catholic knowledge and where it's to be found. Um, he is he is taking it out of that context and putting it in a new context, which makes it entirely different and new. This is why he was so controversial. I don't think yeah, he wasn't ever condemned, although his I think his teachings, some of his teachings were condemned by the Catholic Church, but um, he was certainly um, highly they were certainly highly suspicious and skeptical of him.
Yeah. And that was the
Um,
time to be so.
yeah.
That was the age.
Hmm.
Yeah. That was the age. For
Yeah.
sure.
So we've gone down a kind of a path here,
Well, I did
a
it on
rabbit
purpose.
trail.
I did it on purpose because I wanted to. I wanted. Firstly, I wanted to. I never really asked you a question. I said soul and memory, and I said we're gonna. I ain't gonna ask a question. Just go on a long rant on it. I want to because everything is going back to your book. I also want your readers to and future readers to know. that you are very serious about this subject, and you can take just about any tree, any branch of thought on this subject, and have something to say on it, because you're not giving your opinions, at least not based on just your opinion. We do a lot of that today.
Oh
We do a
yeah.
lot of just sort of, we and then we dig in, and every time you try to correct us or give a new thought, we dig in more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just dig in, like screw Obama and we just stay there, or screw Trump and we just stay there, right? You can't change whatever side you're on, right? You just
Yeah.
you just keep digging deeper. So I have one more question from Confessions, since
Yeah.
that was so good. But I think this is fun though. So we're gonna have some. Well, it's gonna be fun for me, and it's gonna be fun for us to watch you figure out when was your conversion period.
Yeah.
So let's assume for a moment. For this is just so let's world build and create the convert. We're gonna create a different conversion period. So you are already Christian, obviously.
Hmm.
I'm going to make a new conversion period to where you go from being theological to soul-logical. I have no idea how to Latin that word up. Okay, but
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to take you from conversion period from Christianity to where you are now in
Mm.
this research, theology, philosophy, science. All those can be accurate for your book, for
Yeah.
souls. So this is a conversion period. So in Augustine's Confessions, he has the pivotal point is when he's in Milan, and I think I can't remember if it's a little boy, little girl, but it's a child's voice telling him to take up and read, and it ends up leading him to a Bible passage or something like that that inspires him to fully convert over to Christianity. So my question to you is, what
Mm.
was your Milan experience that
Mm.
inspired you? What was your take up and read experience that inspired you to go fully over here and discuss the soul? Because this is not common vernacular in Christianity or scholarship. It's just not something common. We bring it up, but we don't do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your conversion
Yeah,
experience?
that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, because
I like to be a good interviewer.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. No, you do. Yeah. 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 You have a way. You have a Tao, right? Or a Tao.
That's it. Yeah.
You have a way to you.
One of
Yes.
my one of my favorite books, readings, philosophies.
Yes. That's a
Yes.
good one. It's
It
classic.
is.
Um, yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it's interesting. Yeah, you put it that way. Yeah, you're right. I mean, people are not thinking of it in those ways,
No,
and even when
no.
I talk about the soul, as familiar as the soul is, it's also foreign at the same
Sure,
time.
sure it is.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's familiar because everybody says, soul is used so uh in such mundane
Yeah.
ways. I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about, man, that guy has soul.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is he's got a passion or he's got an
Mhm.
emotion or something, or, he's highly persistent or something. We
Right.
use it in a kind of adjectival sense
Unless it's
to
a soul
refer to.
brother, then that means swag.
Right.
That means,
That's right.
there you
Soul
go. Yeah,
brother.
yeah, yeah. Soul
Yeah.
brother means something different.
Yeah.
You understand?
That's right. Who is it? Let's see. I'm the Soul Man. Who was it that wrote the Soul? Who wrote that song?
I'm a
The Soul
soul man.
Man.
Let me
I'm
look it up. Let me look it up.
the
Yeah, I have no
a
idea. I have no.
classic.
Yeah. Soul man, soul.
Soul Man.
That's Blues Brothers.
Isaac. It was
Isaac, probably so. Let's
yeah.
see.
Isaac. Sam and Dave.
Sam and Dave. Soul man. Sam and Dave. And it was on
Yeah.
the Blues Brothers movie for sure. But
Yeah.
Sam
This
and
is a
Dave.
classic
Yep,
song from 1967,
that's it.
and it's the Soul Man or
Mhm.
Soul Man song. It's a great song,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. And now you're the soul man.
And it was inspiration during the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
And so you have this other meaning of soul, right? Yeah, and I'm the soul man. That's a different meaning, right? This is all late. I
Oh
mean,
no,
it's
it says
layered, right?
composed by Isaac Hayes and David Porter.
Yeah,
All right, so Isaac Hayes composed it. All right,
yeah. It's an
even cooler.
important song, right? I mean,
It
in
is.
that period of history, I think it's a good song. It's really important.
Yeah,
I mean, it had an effect on people's psyche. I mean, when people hear "I'm a Soul Man," everybody knows that song.
yeah, yeah. And all
Um,
throughout world history, whatever was happening in the world politically affects music.
mhm.
All throughout world history.
That's right.
Yeah,
It
all
affects
throughout
music.
world history. Yeah,
Yeah. And in some ways, the musicians, the really great ones, sometimes they affect politicians, don't
that's
they?
true.
And the
That's true.
political situation.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, the soul man. Yeah. So the soul concept itself is very foreign.
right.
Well, it's
And,
very
and
familiar. It's
and
very,
what was your Milan experience too? Yeah, and what was your Milan
yeah,
experience? Yeah, what
but
got you
it's
here?
also foreign. And it's foreign in the way that precisely in the ways that I am interested in talking about, because I see the soul itself, the way I'm talking about it, as the soul of Christianity. In many ways, it's kind of it's it's so central to to how we understand Christian theism. Because at the heart of it, it gets at the heart of what it means to be a human. And what it means to be a human is in some way connected to what it means to be God. And the soul is kind of that intermediator as the microcosm, right? Going back to the ancient idea, right, which the Christians kind of transformed in a way and
Right.
took up their own ways and given revelation. But it's rooted in some way in something else, in this sort of anthropological discourse that is central to what seems to be taking place in Christian thought. And so, how do I answer your question?
It's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
hard. It was hard. I
conversion
said it's
is
gonna be fun.
hard.
Yeah, yeah,
It is fun.
yeah,
It's a great question. It's a great question.
yeah.
Conversion is such a fluid term as well. It's so
Oh yeah.
familiar as well as being it's so foreign in some ways in our culture. I mean, I think of my conversion in multiple ways. I mean, there was a point in time at the age of 5 that I said this prayer. I said this, the famous prayer, right?
Hmm.
And then, I mean, that was a conversion. Was it the conversion? So some people think of conversions as multiple experiences in life,
Well,
multiple
you
transformative
definitely, yeah.
experiences, right?
So that would
And
put you in alignment with you. A lot of your book would be very accepted in Eastern Orthodoxy. A lot of it,
yeah,
due to based on
yeah,
what you're
that's
saying right
right.
now. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
then others would take it that we need to emphasize this objective event or this moment, namely the baptism, and that's your
Now,
conversion,
now you're
right?
back over
That's your
here in the
conversion.
West. You're back over here in the
That's
West now.
right. And I mean,
Especially Protestants.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Or at least for the Protestants, it might be walking down the aisle, but
something, but it's got to be objective, and you have to
it's
point to
got to
that
be,
moment, and you
that's
need to
right.
know
You
the
got to
date
point
and
to
the
that.
time.
That's
Yeah,
that's right. You got to point to
yeah,
that moment, and that's
yeah.
decisive. I mean, what's interesting for Augustine is he does seem to have these punctuated moments that are conversion type moments. But then it's interesting because it's already situated in this memorializing of these different moments that all seem to be rooted in eternity for him.
Wow. That's a good
So
point.
that kind of messes things up,
That's a
doesn't
good
it?
point. I never thought about that. That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a
It
really
kind of
good point.
messes with our time. It
Yeah,
messes with us. When we start messing, yeah, we start thinking about eternity and time. It really messes with these sorts of questions. But anyway,
yeah.
but then yeah, there certainly are conversion experiences. There's a conversion experience when I experienced something like uh, this when I came to the realize I don't know if this is a conversion or a realization. When I came to the realization that Christian journey is something like a soul, an internal journey of the soul, of reconciling the whole man to the divine act of God in Christ
Oh,
as being the
there's a lot
decisive
there.
moment.
There's so much there. uh, okay, let me jump in there. There's so much there. Let's go to Eastern Orthodoxy because I think this would be a lot easier in Eastern Church than West. And we have to bring up theosis now, obviously, which is which is easy to understand and accept that God became man so man can become God. Pretty
Hmm.
simple. It's pretty that's crude, but it's accurately crude though. It's really simple. God became man, so man can be God came down to become man, so man can go up to become God.
Yeah.
And so that's easy. So there's no real point of conversion because the whole process of that is conversion from the
Yeah.
moment you are born, just while you get baptized as an infant, all the way until that great incorruptible, what corruptible puts on the great incorruptible day that Paul talks about. It's all
Yeah.
been one conversion. And your book and your idea of souls can sit right in that comfortably. It really can. Taking it back to the West now, it's it would cause some division. Not vicious Rene Descartes division, but since we have to
Mm.
know like who was the 144,000. I need every single name of the 144,000, right? We've got that hyper modernity thing going on.
Yeah.
So I've got two questions for you. They're both unfair but fun at the same time. How would you explain soul in the idea of the conversion process based on your book, your research, where where what responsibility or what effect, whether it be effect or affect, the cause or the influence, what's happening to the soul, or what role does the soul play in this conversion process? No, regardless of what conversion means, you can leave that loose. But we want to focus on the soul here.
Yeah. Gosh. That's a good question too. That's a good question too. But that's a really hard question. What role does the soul play in the redemptive process or the conversion process? I mean, is
That's a good one. I didn't ask that. Yeah, so I guess I'll let you tackle
that what
whichever
you asked?
whichever
Oh, is
one.
that what you were asking?
That
You're
is
asking
what I
a
was
different
asking, but
question.
you asked it better. You asked it better because I didn't include redemption. I just said conversion. I left it loosely. But when you bring in redemption, that's a whole different process in itself. For over here in the West, it is because we seem to have this two, you have to have your redemption, then you have to have your conversion. And I don't think that we have these both together. They don't mean the same thing.
Mhm.
Now, they could be
Yeah.
colliding events like
Yeah.
dominoes, but we don't
Yeah.
have them as one thing. No, we don't have them as one. And I wouldn't ask you this question if I didn't think he was a genius, because I'm like totally putting you on the spot.
That's
Totally putting you on the
okay.
spot.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah. This is a hard one because, um,
I don't even think Plato can answer it.
yeah. Well, I mean, interestingly, I mean, Plato got really close, but I mean, how do you say this about Plato? I mean, play because I wouldn't want to pretend to be smarter than Plato or smart, certainly not. But Plato, I guess at one level, oh, this opens up a whole. It's an interesting question that I can't go into one facet of because it it does.
It's okay. We got 10 interviews anyway. So,
That's right. It
yeah.
does open up a whole nother question about what I mean by revelation, because um, the way you're asking it, it makes me want to say that something about revelation that is uncomfortably unusual. Um, and so Plato, what was wrong with Plato, of course, revelation is a form of it is redemption. I mean, but it's a form of redemption. Plato didn't have that revelation, but it's like he almost got he got so close without having revelation.
Right.
He got so close to having uh, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah.
he this is why he's in
A,
well,
a man amongst men. This is
he
what he
got
is.
so close to divinity. It's like, how do you get close to divinity without having divinity? I mean,
Especially when the
you're
idea of
either
divinity
or.
doesn't even happen for hundreds of years later. It doesn't even
That's right.
happen. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Not the
yeah.
way
So
we
the
understand it now.
Christological moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a Christological moment. And this is what really sort of um distinguishes. This is what people don't it's this is very familiar and foreign as well. And the soul is all up in this because uh this is what people don't understand about Christianity, and people are leaving Christianity in droves, even in America. I mean,
Oh
to
yeah, for
some
sure.
extent. I
For
mean,
sure.
whatever brand of Christianity they're having in their own homes is they have not.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people just have not been going back to church since 2020, um, because it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Um,
I've left Christianity 19 times yesterday. So I
yeah,
mean I get it. I can relate. You know? So
there
yeah.
is something both anthropologically important here, but also um, philosophical. What people don't realize is there's something philosophically different about Christianity that is hard to define, and that is both foreign and familiar to us. Um, and that is that
Gave me
and this
another
is
question.
why, like, when you go down the Platonic route, there's so many different maybe one way to think about it is the way Lewis thinks about it in a bigger sense. There's different halls and rooms you can take when you go down the Platonic
Right,
route.
right, of course.
And and so
And of course Aquinas would disagree with all of them, but you know.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. To Aquinas, I mean, he does have some sort of participatory sort of understanding of sacrament,
Mhm.
where he's picking up on Plato, depending on your read of him. But I mean, he gets back to Plato at some point. Um, but um, but but this is where, like, Plato got so close, but it's something like, how do you get close and not be like a world away? And for Christians who are
Yeah,
or non-Christians or apostate Christians
yeah.
who are in their own implicit Platonic journey, there's a reason why divinity is takes on different forms for people um, when they haven't necessarily experienced or been united to true divinity.
Yeah.
Then they have to form different types of deities.
There's a lot there, man. We can't even touch it on this episode. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Man. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm struggling between asking these next two questions. I only have one, but you okay. I'm gonna insert an opinion. And then I want you because you gave me the opinion when we was talking about leaving the church, and I made the joke of leaving the church 19 times.
Yeah.
And then you respond to the opinion. I'm a millennial,
Yeah.
And my generation is absolutely leaving the church
Yeah.
now the question is, are we leaving the local body or the church, the big C, right? Then that's a
Yeah.
question, but but we'll leave that untapped for now, and maybe you'll tap into it. Here's my opinion,
Yeah.
and then you respond with your intelligence and your souls and everything you got going on. I don't think we're leaving the church per se. I know we're not leaving the local body. I know the local body is causing allergic friction that is that is it's like a splinter under your skin. It just won't stop getting bigger and bigger. I know the local body's doing that for sure. When you draw your body's experience, they're going to say, well, at my church or this church, they're going to come to something local that has nothing to do with the mission of God in the first place. So
Hmm.
that's one aspect. I think that we're not smart. We're not smart enough to differentiate between Christianity in the big C and American Christianity. I think we're leaving American Christianity, confusing it with Christianity in itself, because there is a clear difference between Christianity. So I guess we define it as whatever the sacred text says or the mission of the early church. I'll let you do all that. But there is an American Christianity that is
Hmm.
different from Western Christianity. And it is easily seen by people my age and younger to be the fact that I'm calling it American Christianity, and I'm not the only one doing so. I think we're leaving American Christianity and toxically confusing it with Christianity itself. And since we're not smart enough to draw this delineation here, then we just leave it everything that got anything to do with church. So that's my opinion. And I would love to hear your response to that. It's the first time I've ever said it out loud this way, but
Mm.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm right because it's my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm right, but everybody that has an opinion think they're right.
Yeah.
And let me just say one more thing
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to develop American Christianity. American Christianity says that this so in American Christianity, the center of Christianity is
Mm.
the center of Christianity has two centers. Capitol Hill is one center, and then the
Yeah.
second center is media. It's we can't even say it's the local body. So when and to give you an idea of this, and you can see this American Christianity having a civil war in itself with the white evangelical church. You can see this in itself, like the what the evangelicals have done, we're doing. I'm not trying to point do sides here, but there's something
Yeah.
happened there to the point when Donald Trump won the presidency. Nothing against Donald Trump, the evangelicals scream loud in Capitol Hill and the media, Christ is coming back into the White House.
Yeah.
That's American Christianity in itself. Not just that, not just that,
Yeah.
but then when we go to the media, and this is why I'm saying Capitol Hill. So American Christianity says take away women's rights, and then does that because abortion is it's murder, but that same Christianity
Hmm.
has no issues
Hmm.
with they're pro-life about abortion, but not pro-life about police brutality or poverty brutality, wherever you want to go. Pro-life in one this political area here.
Hmm.
So all that is a development in American Christianity. I could go on for 100 situations, but I'm not trying to draw a jury. I'm just developing what I'm calling American Christianity so you can answer the very difficult question that's never going to get an answer ever. And then people are going to throw stones at you for answering the question. But we're here now. So, what do you
That's
think
a,
about us
uh,
leaving? My original
yeah.
thesis was I don't think we're leaving. I don't think we mean, I don't think we're smart enough to intellectually recognize that we're leaving American Christianity and we're just lumping everybody into it, every Christian into it, all Christianity into it. Now, I think that's not fair whenever you do that. That's like saying, that's like me getting mad at the KKK, which is a Christian organization, and then saying all Christianity is meant to enslave Black people. That's an unfair
Uh-huh.
assessment by taking one sect of Christianity and making all Christianity like that. So I don't think we. Anyway, I've said enough. You've got it somewhere in there. There's an intellectual answer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. That's a You don't
That's
ask the easiest questions, do you?
no, no, not to you. No, 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 no,
I'm
no.
not,
If you
it's
were
going
a
to be hard to
rookie,
answer this.
it
Yeah,
has no answer. I know it has no answer for sure. It has
this
no
is
answer.
difficult because,
Yeah. Hopefully your
um,
audience falls in love with you with your answer, but it has no answer. If it did, you would be a trillionaire for stopping people from leaving the church.
you know, when we start bringing in narratives
Yeah,
and we get deep into the perceptions of what
yeah,
Christianity is, um, and I mean, the social situations that we find ourselves in, political situations that we find ourselves in kind of uh, our history and how that has shaped or layered our different identities, right? This we love identity. We're all
and I
that's
did
what
my
we
best
talk
to
about
leave
now.
race out of it. I know I used the KKK as an example, but that wasn't my argument. My argument had no race in there whatsoever, just this idea of American Christianity.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, that's fine. I think that I understand. I think I understand. Yeah, I think this is difficult for me to
It
answer
is.
because I actually don't have mainstream views on this, but um um it's difficult because when we start this is where the dialectic is important.
Right.
And
And
what
this is where
people
you
think,
as a pastor is important because
yeah,
mainstream views are not. You're
yeah,
sitting right in it.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, but some people think to be the dialectic, they take it to be a kind of um, maybe a creative uh, construction of perceptions,
Mm.
and that somehow we'll kind of arrive at this sort of idealized perception on the top. It's um, some moment in the future. And then some take it to be kind of like there's this give and take in this compromise, and that at some point in history, there's this optimistic progression that we're always progressing in some way, and so we're getting better. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have a pessimistic view of history, or of, but I don't have an optimistic view either. But
I got a Hegelianistic view of history.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
Very
it depends
Hegelian
on
when it comes
what
to
what
that.
are the what are the mechanisms that are getting us better. I mean, some people think we as a nation have gotten a lot better, and particularly what the stain of the narrative in America is the race issue, and that becomes the kind of dominant theme that seems to permeate everything.
It
And
happens.
it does. And I'm trying to gesture to something that I'm not sure I've articulated before, or I know how to articulate. But that that narrative I almost seems like a dead end to me,
Oh, it absolutely is. I would agree
and
with
I
that.
I want to have a different a dialogue. And
You should.
I,
You should. Having a different dialogue is not the same as hiding the dialogue. That's not the same,
That's
right?
right.
Right.
That's
That's
right.
not the same. So the
That's right.
reason why race is so, as you alluded to, just so largely just because we keep hiding the dialogue, and anything you hide just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's just an effect of all of the human experience. So yeah, no, there's nothing wrong. Yeah, switch to actually. I was hoping that you switch the dialogue to bring it back to the souls anyway, because as a pastor, you're sitting in this conversation. Our soul is sitting in this conversation, and this is a very banquet of the souls conversation. This is a dinner table conversation that we're having. There's no doubt about
That's
it.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly. We're
it just
having a
happens
dinner
to be on
table conversation.
Thanksgiving with
Yeah.
your uncle
Yeah.
Antonio don't like you too much apparently.
No, no. It's a good dinner conversation. And we're having recollective moments in our souls
Yeah,
that become revelatory.
yeah,
And so we're trying to we're trying to capture those revelatory moments.
yeah.
And and yeah, that's difficult to do. But the
I mean,
yeah,
nobody solved
so
it. You're not going to solve it in this conversation. I mean, you can. I don't want to limit you, but nobody solved this yet. So
yeah, I
let's
mean,
not
so let's
let's
get
not put that
simple.
pressure on you to solve it right now in an interview.
Yeah, so yeah, let's get simple. Like, let's get back to simple to your question. It's I'm not sure if I can gesture in the direction. We'll see we'll see where it goes. But I would say this, like, okay, so i- American Christianity. I
Something
mean,
there.
yes, to the extent that the dialogue is that Christianity, or the name that's being used, even if it's been emptied of its content, um, and it's been replaced with or informed by um, certain American values or American practices that have dominated what it
Yeah.
means to be Christian.
Yeah, I like practices better than values. Values seems,
Mhm.
yeah, there's something too strong about values. Because I hate to, I'm not trying to put the black eye on the church. I don't want to call it values. I just call it practices. Yeah, I like practices better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think I think the to the extent that that's been done and it's
yeah,
dominated, then
sure.
there certainly there's a narrative there to push that what's occurring in the church is I mean, assuming uh, we're in a language game here also when we're talking about church.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, what is the designation that we're using, and are we referring to the same thing when we talk about it? I mean,
Right,
we're using it in a generic, loose sense to refer to buildings that call themselves the church and that hold to a body of beliefs and things of that sort. But
right.
what is it that people are actually leaving? That's a good question.
That's right.
What
Right,
are what is it that they're actually leaving? And then the further question is, in the process of leaving that, are they actually leaving Christianity or the Christian church? That's the further question.
right.
Um, uh, were they
And
ever there
how
in the
has
first place?
American practices influenced and affected that Christian church?
Yeah,
Because I've drawn a distinction between the Kirche, that German word,
yeah,
and the ecclesia, that Greek word. I have a clear
yeah,
distinction there. Clear.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, to what extent have they left, and or were they there in the first place? What do they?
That was good. Were they there in the first place? That's a good point. That's a good
And
point.
then of course the further question is, where are they going?
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
where have they gone? I mean, if what where they've gone is just to their couch, I'm not sure that that's an improvement.
No, no. And then that
They
sounds like
spend
a,
more time on the couch on
yeah,
Sunday mornings because
yeah,
they've given up on the Sunday morning notion of the church that they were. raised up with,
Yeah.
because they've found it to be irrelevant. In many ways, and I've talked to many people that they've come to a place with, they're actually being quite honest with themselves. They've just come to a place, practically speaking, where they're these Protestants who used to go to church every Sunday. They're like those lapsed Catholics who go to church once a month or once every couple months. It's cool. Um,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
cafeteria Catholics anyway. They can pick and choose what they want.
Right. 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 That's fair.
And so Protestants are basically just doing that. We don't need
Yep.
church. And so it's become really practically irrelevant to us. And whatever void we have now, it was already there before.
And that's a side effect of hypermodernity in itself then. So that's the era in which we live affecting us there. So that's another element added to the argument, because if this was the Renaissance period, we're absolutely doing it in the Renaissance period. But if this was the medieval period, we would absolutely not do that. Right? We absolutely would not do that, because the church was everything. But then that starts shifting with the rebirth, and then shifting with enlightenment, and then we just keep taking it over and over and over. We just keep swinging that pendulum, just so much swinging. But if you
Yeah,
separate, yeah, so if you bring it to couch Christians,
yeah.
that's I believe that's more of a side effect of modernity and hypermodernity,
Ah,
which kind of relieves us from a big chunk of this argument, so we can kind of move those couch Christians away, because that's modernity doing that to them versus American Christianity doing that to them. Whatever we're
yeah,
calling American
yeah.
Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hypermodernity, certainly in one sense, there's a side sort of hyper individualism, a hyper
Right.
sort of individualized authority, a giving up of authority, giving up of any tradition.
Absolutely.
But then in the process, there's a giving up of any sort of robust communal um,
Yeah. Yeah.
activity.
Yeah.
So
Spot
the
on.
religious orientation that once characterized is being replaced by um, I'm not sure if it's being replaced by much of anything. For some, it is. I mean, some,
Maybe
this is
reasoning.
a trend. Well, so we can't leave this yet because we have to come back around at
Oh
some point.
yeah, we might
I'm
end
not
the whole
sure how to come
episode
back.
here.
I'm not, I'm not
Yeah.
sure how to come back around yet. But you do have some who replace it with different narratives. Of course, what you're talking about in American Christianity, there's a kind of conservative narrative that fills in the void or
Right.
the empty spaces of Christianity, and that becomes Christianity, right? And so I
Right.
understand, I see that, and I
Yeah.
understand it.
And I'm
You
doing my
also
best not
see,
to make it negative too. I'm doing my best not to make
no,
it.
you're
I
fine.
called us ignorant
No, it's
by not
fine.
being able to differentiate the
Yeah,
two.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're good. Yeah, you're not going to offend me. I mean, ironically, I think there's a narrative there that's embedded in other narratives too that are
Oh yeah.
interesting, and so you're not going to offend me. I don't have any problem with, I mean, I don't have any emotional problem with people
Mhm.
calling like the American Christianity basically Trumpster Christianity. Now,
Well, it was before Trump though, so we can't even blame Trump. No,
oh no,
and
sure,
and I would
sure,
even go
sure.
so far to say Trump has very little to do with it. They very now,
Oh
now when it
yeah,
when it
yeah,
comes to the
yeah,
media part,
yeah.
now I could put him in the media
Yeah,
part for
sure.
sure.
He just capitalized on something that was already there.
That was already
Right.
there. Yeah.
But that's a kind of filling in the void. But you could also say that there is a trend right now away from Christianity. And this does get us back to the true notion of the soul
Right.
and the soul in union with
Good.
God,
That's
the
what I was
one
asking.
true God.
Yeah.
And I mean, to put it simply, there's to me, I mean, we could reduce all this down to three basic worldviews, I think,
Good.
that capture things. And one is just naturalism and well, there is no real God. And the other is to say that and this is these both are in Platonic dialogues that they permeate his dialogues.
Right.
And the other is pantheism, that everything is God. And I think the alternative is that there is a kind of pluralism and
Good point.
theism. but
Oh,
pluralism and theism, that there is one God. Well, maybe there's polytheism too. Maybe that's in there. That's
yeah,
coming back, but
that's
that
fair.
often gets conflated with pantheism, um, in different ways. But what we see, if there is a progression, or however you want to characterize it, those who are finding religion again, or spirituality more generally again, are tending more toward, and I think this is a trend that we're going to see pick up. They're trending toward pantheism.
It's
And
very interesting.
if they pick up anything at all, I think those who leave Christianity leave. That's such a loaded term.
Yeah,
That's what we're kind of dancing around.
right.
Have they
And we
left?
have
And if
no
they
choice
have
but to
left the church,
dance.
have they left the Christian church? That's the question, right? I mean, um, and to some extent, I would have to say,
So eminently, yes,
yeah,
but we can't say they don't have some sort of transcendent relation. So I guess the question would be, are they leaving God? Now, of course, you,
yes.
you can't be Catholic without
Yeah,
leaving
that's a
God
very
at the
good way to
church.
put it.
Yeah.
That's a very simple way to put it. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, are they leaving God, or the one true God,
Right.
whoever that
Right.
is, whoever it is that we're referring to?
Right. Right.
And I think I would have to say one of two things, probably, that in leaving the church, either one of two things is going on. Either there's a recognition that the church is already gone, or that
Mm.
the leaving of the church is just a kind of a realization that uh,
You,
that
you,
there's an absence, that there was an absence already. It's
I think,
it's
I
kind
think,
of
I
like
think,
that.
yeah, I think I can help you here by being transparent because this played into part of the reason why I retired last year from pastoring. This played into so I think I can spend 30 seconds being transparent, and then you can help me rationalize that. So I still reside over two churches as I put two pastors in place, but I'm no longer actively
Yeah,
pastoring. And this idea of American Christianity played the largest role in it. It played the largest role in it. The idea that what I am a part of
mhm,
is no longer the narrative. And it played a huge role in me saying, well, let me still believe in the mission to
yeah,
God, but here in this space, I don't want to be active in
yeah,
this narrative. I've never thought about this, so you just said it, but I thought about it because it weighed heavy on me. This is literally like 85% of the reason why I retired from actively
yeah,
pastoring at 12 years. But first off, 12 years is a long time to
yeah,
hold that type of gospel plow. It's a long time. But all my counterparts is at 39 years or something. And and I'm still in the Baptist conventions, right? I'm still
yeah.
very much involved
Right.
with church planting and the mission, but I don't want to be involved with the lot. I want to be involved with the library more than I want to be involved with the local body.
Yeah.
So that's my transparency. How does that, when you pick up right where you were, and then I'm speaking this as a pastor. I'm not speaking this as a millennial. This is a millennial pastor who said, I retire from the church, but I'm not retiring from the mission. So there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something there because it proves I didn't leave God, but I did leave the church. It does prove that. It does prove that. And then, but then, did I leave the church if I'm still in the conventions, giving to the church?
Yeah.
So, what has me giving my money to
Yeah.
3,737 churches, but not participating as an active pastor? I didn't
Hmm.
get burnt out. It start violating my soul, to bring it back, circling around. It started violating my soul, that idea. So there's a lot there. I
Yeah.
don't know how you dissect that, but I was trying to give you,
Yeah.
because we were operating with general examples. I'm giving you a very specific example now. I mean, a very specific example now. And I could definitely see pantheism all in there, but I don't, I'm not, I still like to be imminent,
Yeah.
but I maybe when a bunch of churches get together, not when there's just one sitting there, not when
Yeah.
there's, not when there's just one sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's something there. I don't know though, but you're the genius here.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm your
there's
student.
no, no, that's good. Yeah, we'll see. Well, yeah, there's certainly something going on. There's a dynamic going on. I mean, as
It
um
has nothing to do with me being black. It has nothing to do with my. It has nothing to do
yeah,
with me being a black man in America. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with oppression.
yeah,
It has nothing to do with my race. Nothing to do with. It has nothing as much as because that's the cop out, right?
yeah.
Someone my opposing arguments would be where you're saying as a no, it has nothing to do with race whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Um there's certainly something going on with many people are leaving the pastorate for a reason, for a variety of reasons.
Variety of reasons.
Um,
Some are leaving through suicide, which is painful for me to even
yeah,
think about. Many the suicide rate is going up at an alarming rate for pastors, at an alarming rate. So we need to something needs to happen about that, but I don't think we're going to be able to. I don't think that's our role right now.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it certainly gets, hmm, yeah,
Yeah, this is definitely the rest of the conversation. you you untangling this tangle is definitely the rest of the conversation and bringing it back to the souls. So I have no idea what episode two is going to be like, ladies and gentlemen. I have no idea, but I don't know how we're going to top this one.
yeah.
Man,
I think when any narrative and perception um, tends to dominate
sure,
the dialectic
sure,
of Christian Christianity, then it places necessarily
right,
it places limiting pressures on um, how it is that we are experiencing religion,
fair enough.
and it becomes very easy to commodify religion then to um, to fit within those controlled
Sure.
narratives.
So when reasoning gets higher than revelation, this is basically what you're saying. When human reasoning and logic, so when it becomes reason and logic, revelation is third. This is sounds like this is what you're arguing there, because revelation should be top, and then whatever order you want to put reasoning, logic, and experience would be the four categories, right? So you would
Yeah,
have so it
yeah,
should be reason, I mean, revelation, and then the other three is up to you, but reasoning, logic, and then experience. And you're arguing right now what you're calling narratives. I'm going to call the other three because revelation is not a narrative. It shouldn't be.
mm,
Revelation should be revelation. It should stand outside the narrative because revelation is as close to special revelation as we're going to get. And then, of course, in Christianity, Jesus would be the special revelation.
right.
So revelation
Yeah,
would have to be one. And then now, if I put experience, so then people leaving the church will put their experience,
yeah,
and then their logic, they may be tied for one or something, right? Or they're experiencing a reasoning, or the experience and logic, and then their reason may make them leave or something. Two, three, and four can be mixed, but it sounds like you're saying two, three, and four are what we're calling narrative.
uh-huh.
And when it gets higher than revelation itself, we stop looking at the special revelation. And then that's where this thing gets conflated and muddy. That's what I'm hearing, but I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but just
No, I think that's accurate, basically. I think that's not, yeah, that's not inaccurate. I think that's right. I think there's something about the nature of revelation itself that that coordinates the soul in a way
mm,
to divinity that
mm,
that the soul is designed for, but the soul can't manufacture itself. And the
mm.
manufacturing, namely in and through the narratives and the perceptions, um, is well, a product of the modern sort of tendency toward controlling religion in and making it a commodification of something that it pretends to be, but it is not at that point.
Oh,
And so when your soul goes through that shriveling process, it's no wonder that people leave when that becomes dominant in their internal lives.
that's good.
So when I talked to a Catholic last night, and we were talking about the nature of confession.
And I'm a huge
Uh,
fan of Catholic theology, especially
yeah,
Frank Matera. But keep
yeah.
going. Yeah,
And I told her like, wow, I'm very attracted to
yeah,
confession, the way the Catholic Church understands it. I wish we practiced it.
yeah.
Not only does it have psychological benefits that I think are really helpful and the like, but there's something about this this participation in divine, the
Sure.
sacramental nature of confession itself, that if it's real, it it's real. It connects you with the
Yeah,
divine, and it
yeah. It's
helps you to understand.
participation.
That's right.
It's a
It's a
participation.
participation in the
Yeah,
union that you have with the divine,
absolutely,
arguably. And so,
absolutely.
if there's something real happening there, um, there's something. And as a Catholic, as a kind of as so many Catholics are who are kind of lapsed but don't care anymore, um, her response to me was quite revealing. It was quite a commentary because she said, "Why would you want to go to confession?" I don't go to confession anymore. I don't care. And it's like, yeah, huh, that's interesting. Yeah. And I'm the non-Catholic telling the Catholic, actually, there's something really beautiful and
That's
transcendent
you're
about confession.
proving hypermodernity. You are absolutely proving it. that individual that you're proving it for
Yeah.
sure. That
And
was a
yeah,
very hypermodernity response she had. Absolutely one. For sure
yeah,
it
it is.
was.
It is hyper. That's
Yeah.
right. It is hyper modernity. I mean, she's saying, why should I care? She's lost any semblance of knowledge of she was cradle Catholic, raised Catholic.
Hmm.
You know, for the longest time she went to she would go to morning prayer 5 days a week and partake in the Eucharist a lot. She was raised that way. And
Yeah.
now all these Catholics who have done that, they've gotten to this point where it's well, they go to church maybe if they're good,
Yeah.
maybe they even go once every 2 months, and
Because they
that's
can't
quite a
leave the church
drastic
because to
change.
leave the church is to leave
Yeah,
in Catholic theology. If you leave, the only way to get to heaven is through the church.
that's right.
So they have
Yeah,
to do
that's right.
their bare minimum to say I'm
Yeah,
still yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. They're
Yeah, so
still
that's why you don't
holding
have a
on to it.
mass Catholic exodus like you have a mass Protestant exodus. Because for Protestants, you don't need to be a part of the church to get to heaven. But in
Yeah,
Catholics, you need to be
that's
a part
right.
of the church to get
That's
to
right.
heaven. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There's no in Protestantism. There's it's hard to make sense of or hard to argue for a corporeal transcendence that's present and located somewhere. Um,
So good. I
and
love
the Catholics quite clearly have this. I mean, they
Yeah,
have a sort of
absolutely.
corporeal location for where transcendence is, where you meet with the divine, and confession is beautifully a beautiful representation or a place in which you participate in that. And
Right.
that's why. But she's gotten to a point where she's completely lost it. But probably there's still some sort of fear mechanism that keeps her going back. Um, but what's lost is if if the beauty of Catholicism is true and this confession, this notion
Yeah.
is real, then what's lost is the 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 transcendence that is actually found in the sacrament itself, the
Mm.
sacrament of confession, and the meeting of the divine and the human at that place, which is
Wow.
ultimately reconciled in the Eucharist and the communion of the saints in the Eucharist.
Yeah.
But
I have a great book on the Eucharist. I sent it to my daddy's in prison. It's a little thin book, and it's by a Catholic pastor. Well, I don't know if she can call this. Anyway, she's a Catholic woman who has all the degrees. Okay, so we call it Catholic theologian, and she describes the Eucharist in the most beautiful way I've ever read in my life. She says the Eucharist is, well, she takes it back to Jesus. Jesus was the giver of grace, and at the Last Supper, he gave grace to all the disciples, even the deceiver. So we practice the Eucharist in the Catholic Church the way we do because it's not just in remembrance, but in participation. So the grace giver of the church, the local body, gives to us in the same manner as Jesus. So that representation is no longer it's no longer in remembrance, no longer just in participation. We are not even reenacting. We are, and she used, we are we're dispensing grace from the one who has not many sins to those of us who has it. And if I tell you, I read that as a Protestant and felt like the world stopped. It was amazing. I've never read anything like that before. Of course, that's not the Baptist view whatsoever. but
yeah,
but but I thought that was amazing. So since you brought it up, I just wanted to throw that in there for extra conversation for you. But I thought that was, I wish I could remember the name. It's a little small green book like this. It is only on the Eucharist. It's amazing. It
oh,
really is.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that explanation was, she had it was, if Martin Luther and Calvin could have had that conversation, wouldn't even been the Great Reformation. So
Yeah,
yeah, no, I think that was pretty. I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway,
that is cool. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that view was. I thought that was, and I'm saying this as a Protestant. I thought that was the. I'm kind of taking your heart and approach to it. I was saying to myself, man, we need that at Baptist. That we need that kind of view of communion, Eucharist. We need that over here.
Yes.
That's a whole different story. That's a
Yeah.
whole different, yeah. That
Yeah.
would change the way you take it.
That's right. I think
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and this gets back to the question of the role or relevance of certainly of the body in 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 ultimate meaning, what we're taking to be ultimate and meaning and our connection with the divine. And
Right.
so this gets us back to Thomas and at least the Catholics, the way they understand it. It's natural to see that if we are bodies, that we're participating in a body, and the Eucharist is the body that we're participating in. And so the body becomes not only an important metaphor, but the location wherein the divine is present. And so you have this incarnational model. Um, we might have to have a few more episodes. Like
We're gonna have to.
we
And
might
I
have to
have an
have some
idea.
simpler ones. I feel like we're getting into some deep waters and we're nerding out a lot actually here. And I, I,
That's all my fault. The interviewer has done this, but they've all been questions about the book. I have not.
That's right.
Yeah, they've all been questions about the book. Even when we talk about the man Christianity, it was still about how does our soul participate in that. So we
That's
definitely,
right. That's
yeah,
right. They all relate. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but I think that does get us back to this question of the body and the soul in relation to the body and where transcendence is found. I mean, this gets back us back to a kind of a more incarnational model of the church and whether or not the church really is in some ways placed or located where you actually meet the divine. I mean, obviously in a Roman Catholic theology, it's deeply sacramental, it's deeply bodily in a way. I mean, I remember when I hung out with some of the theological professors in Chicago, Mundelein, actually, Mundelein Seminary, and they said, yeah, it's not unsurprising that in Roman Catholic theology, um, people call Roman Catholic theologians materialistic because
mhm,
they're so bodily and so corporeal. And and so because the church really is located spatially in a sense, because as Christ was located
right,
spatially,
right.
and his Eucharist is located spatially.
That's
So when
very
we
true.
partake of the Eucharist, where the Eucharist is properly found, we are truly participating in the divine. We're participating by way of partaking of the divine.
That's very
And so uh, it's deeply bodily and incarnational. So, yeah,
Yeah, well, I can tell you what. So I'll be good next time because artificial mind versus human intelligence, journey through your philosophy, advancements in AI, ethical implications of that, nature of intelligence, phenomenal unity and metaphysical simplicity. This was just the first chapter, Like I've got the questions, but
oh yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
yeah, I've got the
Yeah, I'm
questions.
trying
It
to bring
just
this around to a closure that doesn't actually answer all the questions and
good.
actually
Well,
properly close the discussion, but bring it to
I
some
think my
kind of
last
closure.
answer. So I think my last question is right. Wait, so here was I had this as a planned last question. Where does the soul live in? And I kind of set it up in the beginning, and I think because you're already right here.
Yeah,
If if
I can see it.
if we go to the veil splitting from top to bottom, and the most holy of holy place, depending on how you look at it, but both views would be orthodox. Either the Holy Spirit comes out to man or man can go into the Holy Spirit. Both of those are orthodox. Nobody's going to have a problem with either one of those interpretations.
Right.
So based on
Yeah.
that, yeah, based on what happened at the cross, what is the soul? Two questions. One question with both sides. What's the soul's participation in that? And where does the Holy Spirit reside? Does the Holy Spirit reside in our soul? That's the Holy Spirit, like because we know it's First John 4:4. I mean 4:4. Greater is He who is in me than he who is in the world. He
Yeah.
being the Holy Spirit. So we know the Holy Spirit is residing in us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So is
Right.
it in
Yeah.
our soul?
Yeah.
And then what does that participation on the cross have to do with the soul? That's how I was going to end the
Yeah, that's
podcast
good. Actually,
anyway.
that does help kind of maybe bring some things together, a lot of these threads together. You might threads,
I,
um,
I think your
and
audience is
some
gonna
kind of
love it.
closure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Hopefully they love to see you perform well under pressure and keep
yeah,
it, keep
yeah,
it on topic. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's good. I mean, these are really good questions. It's yeah, I feel like I haven't adequately answered the question of where church is and have we left church. Is American Christianity,
Yeah.
or is it American? Christianity, right?
Ah, yeah.
I don't know, but
That
um,
that's a whole episode in itself. That's a whole episode
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
itself.
yeah.
Yeah, it
It
has to
is.
be.
It is. It
Has to
is. I
be.
think, but I think to bring it back around to this question of, yeah, the
The,
spirit.
yeah, the
I mean, because
spirit,
in
the
a lot of
cross.
times the Protestant church is taken to be a kind of more spiritual entity in the sense that uh, the spirit is present wherever the spirit blows, right? And so the spirit is not something that is confined locally or spatially, as it is so commonly represented, at least in certainly in Roman Catholicism,
Yeah,
because of this strong emphasis upon the incarnation and the fact that
yeah,
the incarnation is still manifest within spatially located boundaries. Or yeah.
yeah.
So I think yeah, I mean I think yeah, this is just giving a philosophical answer that can only be that only gives a partial answer. I think there's two things going on in Christ's death and the Spirit's movement, right? Because um, in
Mm-hmm.
Christ's death, the Spirit is moving in the same way that the Nicene or the Nicene Creed describes. Um, the Spirit's moving between the Father and the Son is the love bond,
Right.
right? The Spirit is moving from the death on the cross to to believers. And yeah, I mean, I would have to say it's a movement in the soul. I
Right.
mean, as Edwards would say, it's an affection in the soul that's that's completely novel and sui generis, that it arises as the spirit makes the soul new, new birth. But what's happening is still very much Platonic in the sense that what's occurring is a spiritual opening of the eyes. So, and this is where the twin themes come in. This is where we're getting a much more theological in
Yeah.
a way that I don't directly do in this book. In my Intro to Theological Anthropology, I do this because I think there's two things going on in terms of anthropology that that helps us to
You do a
see.
little bit of that one in this book too. A little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You
yeah,
do a little bit in the Origin of the Soul. I just wanted to. I'm
yeah.
free plugging you. Shameless
That's
plug.
good. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Shameless
that's
plug. There you
right.
go. There
Yeah.
you go.
Um, that occurs in the union that the spirit brings between the human and the divine, and uh, beatific vision, which is a kind of knowing or seeing the divine, which is only occurs in or by way of the spirit's um, transformation of the soul.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I
Fair
just
enough. No, that's good. That's good. No, that's I've had many a podcast. And yeah, no, that's real good. You know, I was thinking as we wrap this up, I was thinking,
sorry.
no, no, that's perfect. That makes you more human. Yes, you've been this intellectual giant for 2 hours. There you go. There you go. I was thinking that we definitely do need another 9 episodes. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we definitely do.
Yeah,
This would be some
yeah.
sort of series. Like this would be your Banquet of Souls playlist on your YouTube or something, right? It'd be something like that. And so I have no, well, I have a ton of questions. They are all sitting here on this document, and I only answered one question from this document because I was actively listening to you and I followed the conversation. So instead of ending with how to contact you, which since it's going to be a playlist, let's not do that. Let's let's not even we're gonna instead of going to the book as a text, let's go to the book as an idea,
Hmm,
because
hmm,
the
hmm.
text will fade away, but the idea will never fade away, right? And the idea of your book will never fade away. So you give closing thoughts on the idea of your book as it relates to anything or the many things that we talked about today. Take as long as you want. Those will be the closing thoughts. Then I have something to say off camera because I had an idea.
Okay. Yeah, 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 it's good. So, closing thoughts on the book
As an idea. So
as
this
an
and your
idea.
idea, and we started off the conversation that way between Plato and your idea of the book to me as a reader is the soul is on its own journey, and you do a bunch of philosophy, a bunch of stuff. So I'll skip that. The soul is on its
Mhm.
own journey,
Yeah,
and it should be understood as part of our
yeah,
living process in itself. If I had to say what the idea of your book is,
yeah, yeah. Actually, I think that's right. I think that's good. I think that's right. Yeah, I think it's important to say, I mean, yeah, so we talked a lot about Plato and Aristotle, and for some listeners that may not meet them, they may it may cause them to think this is kind of very foreign and not relevant to their own experiences itself. But I mean, I would suggest that that the journey itself uh, that that Augustine is on, and that Banquet of Souls is trying to help us to get into or capture and to be a part of
right?
or consciously is something that is actually at one level common to the human experience. It is just it's a big part of just what it means to be human. And so it's what we're all involved in at some level and to some degree. We're already involved in it.
That's fair.
Now, whether we realize it or not is another thing. How much we're conscious of that is another thing. But the commonness of it is there in the same way that, or in a similar way that the dinner table is common. It's a common place of meeting, and the soul is common to all of us, almost so common that it can seem as if it's mundane, but it's that mundane wherein also we find um, the divine. And so the soul is a one in one way at one level common, but it's also the meeting place of the divine. And this is common to the Platonic tradition. I think it's right, and that's what I'm trying to help readers to see and to understand that's right, but it's just common to the human experience. But um, but it's the yeah, the soul itself is something that is, again, going back to, it's both foreign and familiar to us.
Right.
But the foreign bit of it, I think we need to take a little bit more we need to take a little bit more note of. We need to take stock of it, and we need to get back to it, and we need to be more consciously invested in the process itself, um, so that, practically speaking, not only will it help us become more just self-aware and better people and more virtuous, hopefully, and 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 have more satisfying internal lives because we we have a disciplined reflective life or
Mhm.
introspective life, you know, all these sorts of things and these benefits that gurus talk about. Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. Great, great. That's good. But it also is the meeting place where we find the divine, I think. And this is why the soul in Christian tradition has been so commonly associated with the image of God. Um, and that we as human beings truly are images of God, um, who are ultimately represented in the person and work of Christ, where the divine and human meet in a particular way. And I think that's the journey we need to be on and we need to be about. And I think I think we need to have another discussion.
Well, we have no choice. We have no choice. Even yeah, we have no choice. Even if we didn't have so much fun on this one, the book, as I said, as a compliment though, is dense. It is. So I remember I told you I had a Apostle Paul comparison for you. I see when I read the book of Galatians, I'm reading a masterpiece. Some scholars would say it's a masterpiece with a lot of underdeveloped ideas because Paul was in the beginning of his journey, and he then does Romans as Galatians 2.0, right? And he fully
Yeah.
develops out those ideas, and I agree with that, but also don't agree with it because I'm a marketer in real life, and I think Paul was a great
Mhm.
businessman, and I think Paul, while that's true, that it was his early part of the journey, I think Paul wrote that for that audience who could understand it at that time. And there was a lot to talk about. So he just talked about these few things. And I look at your Banquet of the Souls as Galatians, and somewhere a few years from now, I don't know, 10 years from now, as your journey is ending, they're gonna write a big Romans
Yes,
version
I
of
like
this
it.
book. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because there's so much to
I think there is something there. Yeah,
yeah,
we have
yeah,
to
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
how I see it. That's how
I
I
think
see
we
it.
have to talk about that. Yeah, I think
And
there's something there.
absolutely, absolutely. And then we need to. I'm gonna start off next. Well, I really need to get to this homoousios. I really need to from our audience probably doesn't know that's a Greek word that means of the same substance, and I really want to know. This is next episode. I really want to know, are you saying the soul is of the same substance of the Holy Spirit? I really, really want to know that. I really do. And I was looking for it in your book and I couldn't find it. But since I know the author,
Yeah, well,
since I know the
yeah,
author, yeah, we'll have to figure
we're
that
gonna
out.
have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've got
we'll
some
do
good
that.
questions for you. So
Yeah.
well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dr. Joshua Ferris. As you can see, he is one of the smartest men on the planet and can handle completely impromptu. Holy smokes. Did you really ask that question out loud? Questions? He could do that with no problem. So hopefully you fell in love with him, buy his book, and buy
Yeah.
buy two or three copies at one
Yes,
time. Yes,
that's
there
right.
you go.
Or
There
10.
you go.
Yes, or 100. Yeah,
Or 100.
that's
There
fine
you
too.
go.
100.
All right,
Very good.
everybody. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here.